Hi there and welcome to another video from Hegarty Maths. It's Mr. Hegarty here. It's the 18th video on the GCSE Higher Revision series and it's on surveys and questionnaires. Just a reminder, these videos are just for short, sharp revision for students working around the CB grade for the higher paper. So I'm not going to go in depth into the theory behind it. I'm going to give an example at the start of the main ideas, and then you copy that down, make a revision card, and then you try the exam questions that follow. Then you mark your work against my solutions. Right, so to start with, there are two things you need to know about with regards to surveys. You need to know what a data collection sheet is, and you need to know what a questionnaire is. With a data collection sheet, they would say something like design a data collection sheet to count how many males and females go into, I don't know, Tesco's one Saturday. Now, all you need to remember, you just need to remember this, it's something you need to learn. A data collection sheet, this word here, data collection sheet, just means it's another word for a tally chart. So whenever you see that, all you've got to do is design a tally chart. So what you do is you just draw a column like this, okay? And what you'd have is the title of your column would be gender here. Obviously you'd have female and you'd have male. They're the two genders that might go into the shop, male or females. You'd have a tally column here where you would count them as they go in, like that type of thing. And you would have a total column here where you actually numerate that tally. So for example, you'd say 7 here, 2 here. So when you see data collection sheet, it just means design a tally chart. So just make sure you've got the 3 columns, whatever the thing you're counting, and the options of the things you could count, a tally column and a total column, and fill in some data, just make up some data just to show them you know what it means. Okay, the other thing you have to know about is questionnaires, okay? And questionnaires come up a lot and they ask you to design questionnaires, to comment on what's wrong with questionnaires, etc. And generally there are always 3 things wrong with questionnaires and 3 things you have to bear in mind when you design them. So a questionnaire would be wrong if it had no time frame. For example, if I said to you, how often do you go to the cinema? That does not tell you whether I mean a week, a month, a year. So usually that's a problem with questionnaires. It's one to look out for and one to avoid when you're designing them. The second one is overlapping categories. For example, if I said to you something like, how many books do you read a week? If I said something like 0 to 5, 5 to 10, or 10 to 20, something like that, then what would you do if you read 5? Do you tick that box or that box? And similarly with 10, would you tick that box or that box? So overlapping categories are not allowed in your tick boxes. And the third thing that's usually wrong with questionnaires is no option given for something. For example here, what if I read 40 books? There's no option to tick there. So no option given, that's usually the third thing. So what you've got to do is, when they'll ask you for problems with questionnaires, and they'll give you one and ask you for problems, look out for these 3 things, they're usually always the answer. Also, make sure you avoid them when they ask you to design one. The last thing they're going to ask you is something about the word, bias. Okay, bias means when something isn't fair. So they might say to you, imagine they said, trying to find out how many people like football. So I stand outside Stamford Bridge, which is Chelsea's football stadium, by the way. I stand outside Stamford Bridge on a Saturday after the match and ask people whether they like football or not. Why is that biased? Well, it's biased, and this is the key term you've got to get in there. You've got to say it's not representative of the population. Because I'm asking football fans if I stand outside Stamford Bridge, so obviously they're going to like football. Whereas I'd need to ask a wider variety of people to make it representative of the population. So they're all the ideas that we need to think about. Now I'm going to do one example and you copy this through. I've got one question coming up. I want you to copy it through and work through it with me while I draw out all these points, and then pause the video and work through the exam questions yourself, and then check your work against my answers. So here's my example, copy down as we go through. Let's read this carefully. Gary wants to find out how much time teenagers spend listening to music. He uses this questionnaire. Okay, so he asks, how many hours do you spend listening to music? 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, or over 20? Write down 2 things wrong with this question. Well, we said usually there's no time frame, overlapping categories, and no option given. All 3 apply here. Let me tell you why. 5 is overlapping. 10 is overlapping. So you could just write down here, one of your problems is overlapping categories, e.g. 5 and 10. That's certainly wrong. What else have we said is usually wrong? Well, there's no time frame. Read the question. How many hours do you spend listening to music? Was that a month, a day, a year, an hour, or what? It doesn't make any sense. So that's a problem with it there. So you could say no time frame given. And actually, all 3 problems are with this. No option given. What would you do if you don't listen to any music? There's no option for none. So a third problem is no option for if don't listen to music. Now, you could have written any of those 3 things and you would have got the 2 of the marks, any 2 of those 3 things. So make sure you always remember these because they always apply. Don't try and say something like it's vague. Students say stuff like this, it's vague. Okay, they say it's rude, stuff like that. Forget those out of your vocabulary for these questions. Just use the 3 examples I've given you, and they usually always apply. So we're continuing this question, that's part A. Then the question went on to say, design a better question for Gary's questionnaire to find out how much time teenagers spend listening to music. So have the same question, how many hours? But you need to put in a time frame. So let's say a day, for example, do you spend listening to music? That time frame will give you one of these 2 marks. So this was, you had to get that in to get yourself the mark. You had to write the question and get that in. Now let's make sure we've got non-overlapping boxes and all options. So let's say we have none, no hours. Okay, that's certainly one of the options. And what would we do for the other ones? We could say, I don't know, something like 1 hour. In fact, up here, maybe we should, how many hours to the nearest hour, to the nearest hour. That might have been a better way. To the nearest hour would you spend? So no hours, 1 hour, 2 hours, and let's give all the possible options. Let's say more than 2 hours. Okay, so it was important there to get to the nearest hour. It made it easy for us to do our boxes. Don't do overlapping boxes. Something like that would be absolutely fine. Now, last point, this is what we were talking about bias. Gary gave this survey to teenagers coming out of a CD store. Why might this give a biased sample? Well, teenagers coming out of a CD store, and this is the key phrase, are not representative of all teenagers. And then you can write what you mean by that. They're more likely to like music. They are more likely to listen to music more. Okay, So what you should do is ask teenagers who aren't coming out of a CBC store, maybe just teenagers walking down a random street. That would be much better. And that's everything in one question that sort of comes up. So let's just review the question. Problems with a question. So we've got overlapping categories, no time frame, and we've got no option. And we've got here design a questionnaire, so make sure you give a time frame, not overlapping, and all the options, and also talking about bias. So they're usually the questions to come up. So at this stage, you should have taken your notes down for this topic, and now you can work through, I think there's 6 exam questions to do. So pause the video, work through those, and then mark it at the end. So I'm going to go through all the questions in 10 seconds. Okay, the first one. Here's the first exam question. It's talk about Sam wants to find out the types of film people like best. I'm going to highlight this, types of film. He's going to ask whether they like comedy or action or science films or music was the best. Design a suitable table for data collection sheet. Now remember, going back to my notes, I talked about a data collection sheet just being a tally chart. So all we have to do here is we have to say type of film as the type of film, tally, and a total. That's all we need here, and we just put the 3 columns like that, and make sure we write in the type of films it can be. He wants to do comedy, action, science, or musical. So we'd write here comedy, action, science, or musical. Simple as that. You could put a few tallies in if you want to, that sort of thing, just to show you know what you're doing. So that was as simple as that. A data collection sheet just meant a tally chart, just have to learn that. Okay, Sam collects this data by asking 10 students in his class at school. This might not give a good way of finding out the types of film people like best. Give one reason for your answer. Well, think about this. Sam wants to find the type of films people in general like best, not children. Okay, so what you've got to say is asking students is not, and the key word is representative, does not represent, is not representative of all people. Okay, therefore might give biased results, might give biased results. Okay, so that's the key word in there, as we've mentioned before, is not representative of the population, because he wants to find out about people and he doesn't just want to find out about students. Maybe you could even write the phrase in here, he could ask more than just students. Okay, just to make that point clear. All right, next question, exam question 2. You should have done this, hopefully you got this right. Let's just check it. Prandeep wants to cover how much time people playing sport. He uses this. How much time do you spend playing sport? 0 to 1 hours, 1 to 2, 3 to 4. Write down 2 things wrong. Well, we know 3 things usually wrong with this. Here, it doesn't say in a time frame, like at the weekend or per day, so no time frame. You've got overlapping categories, like the one there. So you've got no time frame, you've got overlapping categories, and what about more than 4 hours? That was a third possibility that you could have written, but you only needed 2. Design a better question for Pradeep's questionnaire to find out how much time. So copy the same question but put time frame in. So just write how much time a week, let's say. So that'll get you the mark. To the nearest hour, do you spend playing sport? Question mark. So this here, this time frame got you a mark there, and now you put in boxes. So just say no hours. Let's say, I don't know, 1 to 2, 3 to 5, and why don't we say more than 5? more than 5. Done. Okay, next question. Question 3. Hopefully you could do this as well, but let's just go through it. Guy wants to find out how much time people spend watching TV. He will design a questionnaire, design a suitable question. So we've just got to make sure the question has a time frame in the boxes. So how much time? Let's say a week, shall we? So let's say a week. That's what gets you your mark, a time frame. Do you spend watching TV? And then maybe we'll put to the nearest hour. No hours. 1 to 3, or maybe you might just put 1 hour. You might just put 2 hours, or you might put 3 hours, and you might put more than 3. Something like that. Okay. Okay. Next question. Question 4. Hopefully you could do this. Paula wants to find out how much people spend buying CDs. She uses this question in her questionnaire. How much do you spend buying CDs? Notice there's no time frame. 10 to 30, 30 to 50, 50 to 70. Notice overlapping here again. Notice all the overlapping. So 2 things wrong here. No time frame. Again, as always. Overlapping categories. E.g. £30. And the last one again, no option for no money. No option for no money. And then it says, Paula asks 100 people in a CD store to do her questionnaire. Remember, she wants to find out how much money people spend buying CDs. Explain why her sample is biased. 100 people in a CD store, and what's the key term? Are not representative of all people. And you might want to justify that with a sentence. They are more likely to buy CDs. Okay, so another one done. Okay, question 5. Just going to go to dual page here. Question 5. It's on 2 pages. This one. It says Mason is doing a survey to find out how many magazines people buy. Use this question. He uses this question in a survey. 2 things wrong. Well, it doesn't give a time frame. It doesn't say a week or what. So no time frame. Overlapping categories, as always. This is getting very repetitive, but I'm sure you're understanding it now. Overlapping categories. And lastly, no option for more than 12. So you could have written no option for more than 12. Write a better question for Mason to use. So you would just write something like, how many magazines do you buy a week? And you could write none. You could write 1 to 3. You could write 4 to 6, and you could write more than 6, something like that. And then it says Mason asks his friends at school to do this questionnaire. Why might it not be a good sample? Well, he wants to find out how much about people buying magazines, and he's just asking his friends at school who are students. So his friends, school pupils, and you've got to get the key phrase in, are not representative of entire population. And you may state what you mean by that. Maybe they are more likely to buy magazines. Okay, and the last one, question 6, let's just race through this one. Julia's investigating how much exercise people do a week. She uses these two questions. What is your age? So under 15, 15 to 20, 25, 25 to 40, and over 45. Notice the overlapping categories there. And the next one, how much exercise do you do? A bit, some, a lot. Write down one thing wrong with each of these questions. Well, question 1 is overlapping categories. Categories. 25. And question 2, you could say it's a vague question. This is a different one, but you could say no time frame. Always stick for the ones we know. No time frame given. Okay, because it doesn't say a week, etc. And you could also get a mark in this case for saying vague options. Okay, a bit, some, a lot. What does that mean? So she wants to, Julia wants to know how much time people spend doing exercise. Create a questionnaire. So this one, we just care about how much time people spend exercising, not your age this time. So you might write how much time to the nearest hour do you exercise a week? Question mark. Might put 0. We might put something like 1. We might put 2 hours. Might put 3 hours. And we might put more than 3. And that's it. That's everything that can possibly come up on data collection sheets, surveys and bias, etc. Hope now you're a total master at these. Usually comes up for 4 marks in the exam.